Christ is risen.
The Lord is risen indeed. Alleluia.
I have here a bunch of grapes. Now, how mean of it would it be if I were to offer you just one single grape and no more? One grape in my hand looks fine, but you know, the stem of the vine that's left over when we take away the grapes looks disheveled and grotty, a sign of things once promised, but no good on its own. Grapes on their own as individuals are small fruit. A vine on its own without fruit looks forlorn and wilting, if not dead. A few years ago, a friend in Greece was very excited when he realized we were returning to his village in Crete that summer on our holidays. He rang us with gushing enthusiasm and delight. We must come and see what he had done with the graveyard in his village, Piscopiano. The graveyard? Now, I'm interested in visiting churches and churchyards, and graveyards and gravestones provide rich material for social, local, and family history. I'm still hoping in all hope, to get back to Greece later this year. But a graveyard is not the first place you think your friends want you to visit on a holiday in the Mediterranean. So, I asked again. The graveyard? Yes, you're going to be delighted to see how the vines are growing with new life. You remember how I trimmed back the vines and the branches and how I built new trellises. Now there's a rich crop in the grapeyard this year. The grapeyard. Of course, now it makes sense. I had shown an interest in his grapes, his vineyard, and a healthy interest in wine. Now a new lesson awaited me on how to grow grapes, how to trim the vines, and how vines, like people, only make sense in clusters. You can make no wine from a single grape, or even a single bunch. The grapes on the bunch and the clusters on the vine produce better fruit and better wine when they are together, working together, abiding in and with each other. In our gospel reading this morning, Christ talks about himself as the true vine, and he invites us to abide in him as he abides in us. The prayer of humble access prays, and that we may evermore dwell in him and he in us. In our gospel reading this morning, he tells us, I am the true vine. This is the seventh and the last of the 7 I am sayings in St. John's Gospel. They begin with, I am the bread of life, and end with, I am the true vine. It is as though our experience of meeting Christ together in the Eucharist, in sharing the bread and wine together, collectively, bookends or encloses our experiences of Christ as the light of the world, the gate for the sheep, the good shepherd, the resurrection and the life, and the way and the truth and the life. Poetically, the bread and wine open and close these 7 I am sayings. Our openness to Christ, present in the bread and the wine of the Eucharist, is at the beginning and the end of our acceptance of who Christ is for us. The image in our readings this morning is of God the vine grower and the gardener. Christ is the vine, and we are the branches bearing fruit. The vine is trimmed so that it can grow new fruit. But this is not the heart of the teaching here. Instead, the image offered here is one of abiding and remaining, the image of the vine grower, the vineyard. The vine and the branches is one about the living word existing as the lifeblood of those who belong to Christ. Johannine scholar Raymond Brown says this passage is about the disciples remaining in Christ. Many people in the church talk about following Jesus and leading a virtuous life, but here the image of abiding is about being, not about becoming. If we are abiding in Christ, then God is central, not the desires of our egos. And so, when we are invited to the Holy Table, to the Holy Communion, to the Eucharist, it is not because we lead a virtuous life, and we should not be afraid to come to the Eucharist fretting that others think we live lives that are not virtuous. Instead, the words of the prayer of humble access remind us, we do not presume to come to this your table, merciful Lord, trusting in our own righteousness, but in your manifold and great mercies. We are not worthy so much as to gather up the crumbs under your table. But you are the same, Lord, whose nature is always to have mercy. Grant us, therefore, gracious Lord, so to eat the flesh of your dear Son, Jesus Christ, and to drink his blood, that our sinful bodies may be made clean by his body, and our souls washed through his most precious blood, and that we may evermore dwell in him, and he in us. Amen. Christ is risen.